So thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Anthony Ibadara, and I am an assistant director here at the K-State Career Center. I work primarily with College of Engineering students. That being said, I also help all kinds of students. And so we're so happy that you're here. We're so excited that you're joining us today. I mentioned this before we started recording, but definitely feel free to put questions in the chat and I'll answer those as I go along. This will be about a 15 to 20-minute presentation. We're going to kind of keep it high level, but it'll be definitely something that you can take advantage of to kind of get you going for this part-time opportunities fair today, as well as the career fairs and everything else that you'll encounter at your K-State experience here at the university. So let's go ahead and get started. Resume building, what is it? And before we get super deep into this, I got to tell you two things. Number one, there's no such thing as a perfect resume. The perfect resume does not exist. It's more about being consistent and confident. And that's the second thing. It's confidence in being able to tell your story. Your resume is your story, and whatever you feel is going to tell your story the best is going to be the direction that we should go. I can give you some advice. Other people can give you advice. You can show 25 people your resume and get 30 different opinions about it. So keep that in mind as we go, what we're going to tackle, or maybe just some high level points about being consistent and maybe some things that you can do to kind of help your resume stand out. So getting started, let's go ahead and go with the big picture. What is the resume? So we want to make sure our resume is visually appealing, using traditional fonts. I'm sorry, Comic Sans is not a traditional font as much as I love that font. Wingdings are not traditional font. So good block letters and using bullet points to help tell your story is a good way to go. One of the big things is just being consistent with where we're putting information, how we're presenting our story, how we're presenting our jobs. Being consistent with how we're telling our story on our resume is a big key factor for this. Right now, you probably all will want to keep your resume one page. As you get deeper into your career, your resume will go on to about a page and a half to 2 pages. But know that right now, for the purposes of this part-time fair and future career fairs and meetup events that we host here at the Career Center, a one-page resume is probably about the direction we need to be at. Being confident, highlighting your strengths, marketing yourself. You know how great you are, and as the resume is definitely not a time to be shy about what we're doing here. So definitely highlight your strengths and market yourself. Put all the highlights in there. You know, the other things that we want to be mindful of are, how are we going to help that company achieve their goals? Why does that company need you on their team? So you want to make sure that we're looking at job descriptions and making sure our resume is matching up to some of those job descriptions that are out there. Lastly, is it relevant? So if you are a freshman coming into K-State, things that you did in high school are going to be very relevant because it just happened. 2 years from now, as a sophomore, there may be some things that you're doing on campus in a student organization, whether it's through a sorority, a fraternity, whether it's through a student group, or maybe you sign up to be an ambassador for a college. Those skill sets and those groups are going to take a little bit more precedence than maybe some of the things that we did in high school. But that doesn't mean that things in high school are irrelevant even as a sophomore. So things I always like to highlight, Boys State, Girls State, Eagle Scouts, honor societies, those are still pretty relevant in your sophomore year. By the time you hit your senior year and you're the big person on campus, you're in charge of 5 organizations, you got that 4.0 GPA, you got job offers coming at you from all areas. There may be some things that you did in high school that are maybe even less relevant. Your high school GPA, for example, is great right now. But after that first semester of K-State, your college GPA will be the one that is a little bit more relevant than the high school GPA. So keep that in mind as far as, is it relevant to what's going on in your resume? So let's just kind of think about where we start. You know, your resume is going to have all kinds of information in there. And these are some areas where we could start. We want to maybe think about an objective statement, maybe our education. We want to highlight that. What does our work experience look like? what activities are we a part of, what are some honors and awards we have received. And all of these are gonna, we're gonna fill out, but just think of these as your headers as we go down. And don't worry if you're having a hard time visualizing this, because I have a really good example here at the end of the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's consider these categories. Probably the main thing that wasn't mentioned on that first page is probably the most important thing, is the contact information. Our name should be the boldest, the biggest font on our resume. Otherwise, employers won't know who you are. So we always want to have our resume, our name at the top, as well as our contact information, just because that's the first place employers are going to look, is where employers are going to say, oh, hey, Anthony, it's nice to meet you today. Tell me a little bit about yourself. At that point, you're engaging in conversation, but it's hard to engage in conversation if an employer is looking for where to get that information. So things that need to be included is your address, whether it's, this is maybe something that if you want to include your permanent address, that's fine. If you want to include your local on-campus, off-campus address, that's fine as well. As you get further along into your program, your address is also something that could be optional, especially if you're looking at saying, hey, Kansas, we had a great 20 years together. It's time for us to go our separate ways and grow. If you are not planning on staying in Kansas after you graduate. Not including an address is something that's optional. But for where we are coming in, definitely maybe your local address or your permanent address is absolutely fine. You want to have a good phone number down there, a professional voicemail. The professional voicemail is absolutely something that we want to include. We want to start getting prepared for that, because we never know who is going to call us, and we never know who's going to come across our phone number. Lastly, you're all going to be getting at k-state.edu emails or at ksu.edu emails, and we always want to list that. Even if you forward your K-State email to a Gmail account, you still want to lead with your at ksu.edu email, because it helps the employer get in the mindset of, oh, this person is still in school, or this person is coming in for an entry-level position. So definitely, these are the things that we want to do. Professional voicemail, a good phone number, current address, and your email address. Those are all going to be at the top, and you'll see what I'm talking about here at the end with one of the example resumes I have. Again, for those of you just joining us, if you have any questions, feel free to put the questions in the chat. And also, this presentation is being recorded. So, all right. So now that we have our contact information, we have a thing called an objective statement. And the objective statement is something that maybe is just a little bit more optional. So when I was going to school here in 2000 about 21 years ago, objective statements were the thing. We had to have a real strong objective statement. It was going to be really hard to get hired without a good objective statement. And what we've seen is objective statements have kind of, I don't want to say fallen by the wayside, but aren't held as high up in value, right? But if it is something that you want to include, it's absolutely okay to use an objective statement. The challenge, the key thing to an objective statement is that it should be short and to the point. Your objective statement should not be more than 2 sentences. If your objective statement is almost a full paragraph, 3 sentences, maybe it takes up 3 lines, then we need to shorten it, and we just need to be specific to the point. We always want to tailor our objective statement to either the job we're applying for or to the kind of career we want to have. So an example I have of that, if you do want to include an objective statement, is to obtain an on-campus position at K-State Housing and Dining. That will let the employer know what we are trying to get, and we're not, taking up too much time, and we're not taking away from the rest of the content that's on that resume. So objective statements are great. If you do decide to use them, keep them short and to the point. If you decide to not include it in an objective statement, then I would absolutely say it's okay to not include that. So now that we've got our information and we've got our objective statement, let's go ahead and sneak down to the next part, which is the education. So as of right now, I'm not quite sure how many are freshmen, incoming freshmen, how many are maybe maybe your first semester at K-State. I don't know what any of that looks like, but things that we should be considering is that now that you are going to be attending K-State, we need to go ahead and list this because it's going to show that you are learning the skills that we need to do. So the education should be listed kind of like this. We always want to go in reverse chronological order. So that means we want to go ahead and list the things that are more recent and then the things that are least recent. So for instance, coming in, you can put Kansas State University, Manhattan, Kansas, expected May 2024 as a graduation date, May 2025. And then underneath that, you could put your major. If you are going to be an open option, you can absolutely put Bachelor of Science in Liberal Arts. If you are going to be in business administration, you want to put Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with your major finance. If you're in engineering, you would put a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering. Now, we do have ways that we can help you out, figure out what you're going to list in there. But since you are going to be attending K-State, go ahead and list K-State as a part of your education. One other thing that you can do is you can definitely move your GPA right here and slide it right underneath your expected graduation date to save space so that we weren't giving up a line. Your high school, like I said, will go underneath that. The GPA, if you do have a really good GPA, your high school GPA right now, if you're coming into K-State, your high school GPA is gonna take precedence until the end of your first semester, and then at that point, your collegiate GPA is going to take precedence on that. So I do have a couple of questions here. Let's see here. So we're going to talk about work experience, Isaac. We're going to talk about things that we can do to help the resume stand out. We're going to talk about some different things that we can include if we don't have the work experience. So sit tight on that one. The objective statement. So the objective statement is something, and I think I have an example of that coming up. But the objective statement is just a one-line statement at the top of your resume that talks about what you want to get into or why you're handing out your resume. What's your objective with that resume? So sometimes when a student will come in and ask for a resume critique, I will ask, what are you wanting to do with this resume? Is it to apply for internships? Is it to apply for full-time jobs? Is it to apply for on-campus job? Is it for a scholarship? So those are the kinds of things that we can indicate in our objective statement. It's not anything that you have to have, but it is something you can take advantage of if you choose to. So I hope that answers your question. Let's see here. Let's go. Perfect. And then how frequent should I be updating my resume? Your resume is the most fluid document you will ever have. It is a document that as you take a new course, you can throw it on there, especially if that course is relevant to the job you're applying for. So I would say there are some folks that update their resume monthly. I try to update mine about every 6 months, depending on what I've done, what tasks I'm working on. So definitely your resume will grow as you grow. So as you get leadership positions, as you get scholarships, as you get work experience, as you take relevant coursework, you will want to update your resume to reflect that. I would say if you're coming in now and you're getting this thing fixed up for this part-time job or some scholarships now, at the end of the semester, we need to update it because we're going to have that new GPA right here. So we want to get that updated. Maybe you've decided to go ahead and add a leadership studies minor or a Spanish minor, or maybe you decided to go ahead and add a different major. So as you grow, your resume should grow with you. So definitely keep your resume as a growing fluid document so that way it can grow with you. Okay, so I know we're running out of time, but I'm happy to answer questions still. So you mentioned, someone mentioned about how do we stand out if we don't have work experience or whatnot. So we can highlight the courses that we're taking that maybe require us to learn more about Microsoft Excel or make us do tasks in Microsoft PowerPoint. Or maybe there's a course where we have to give presentations with groups. And so we can highlight our public speaking skills. If you are going into engineering, you have one of the first courses you may take may get you a certification in using some technical tools. At that point, we can go ahead and list those on the resume. And I think it's very easy to do, and it's even easier to think that we aren't getting work experience if we're just listing our coursework. So don't feel as though because you don't have a work experience, you're not going to be competitive. You're getting experience in the courses that you're taking. So we want to include our relevant coursework. If maybe right now your resume is a little bit short and it's not quite a full page, then we can include that. Maybe we want to go ahead and highlight some of the courses that we're taking that are relevant to the position. So if we are looking at a potential on-campus position with the K-State Collegiate and we're taking some communications courses right now in the fall, we can list those courses so that way those people know that we are learning about what this potential job may do. So this is a method that we can use, highlighting relevant coursework. As you get deeper into the courses, again, this will change. It will grow. We will want to highlight some more features in this coursework. But for this presentation, we're going to go ahead and leave it like that. We're going to go ahead and leave relevant coursework just like this. The other thing we can include if we feel like our resume isn't long enough is a skills section where we can absolutely include some other skills that we learned. Maybe you already are Microsoft certified in some of the work that you've done. Maybe you already can use some programming languages like Python or C++ or C# or .NET. Maybe you already written and know how to do a page layout for a yearbook. Or maybe you've already taken some advanced courses in mathematics that can maybe help you get in with the math department. You can highlight those skills on your resume. Definitely, if your resume is a little bit shorter, feel free to go ahead and include skills to add a little bit more length, add a little bit more teeth to your resume. Include if proficient in another language. So if you are proficient in Spanish or Portuguese or Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, Japanese, highlight those things because those are going to help you stand out. Definitely try to just make sure that your skills are relevant and we're not being repetitive on what we're listing as a skill set. So the skills section should not take up a whole bunch of space on the resume, but it is absolutely something we can do to help our resume stand out a little bit by highlighting those skill sets. The next thing we're going to talk about is the work experience. This section is probably one of the most important sections that we're going to have on our resume. Now, this is based off of maybe a student's resume that would maybe be a sophomore or a junior. And what we're going to see here, and we're going to talk about it more here a little bit soon, are some of the basic formats, the way a work experience can look like. So we're going to highlight our job title, the time that we took it. And again, we're doing reverse chronological order. So the design engineering intern took place after the host and busser position here. So we want to go ahead and list the design engineering intern first. We put the company name, the company location, and then we're going to go ahead and list out things that we did here. Now we can go into a 2-hour presentation on what makes a great bullet point, but we don't have that time. So I have some tips that we can utilize to help us kind of develop this bullet point feature out. What you'll see here is we are, using specific details about what we're working on. We're talking about, we're leading in with a good strong verbs out here. We should name drop the systems that we're using, the programs that we've used. But the other thing that we also want to look at is being consistent with where our tenses are. So we are no longer a host and busser at Sabor Latino restaurant. We are, so since we are no longer there, we have to make sure our lead-in verbs are in past tense. If we were still a host and busser, then we would want to take off the past tense and we would say assist with opening, arrange seating, serve as backup, clean and prepare tables. So keep that in mind as you work on your resume, that the things that we're still doing are present tense and the things we are no longer doing are in past tense. If you're certified in certain fields and have, if you're certified in certain fields, we can add a certifications section and we can put in all the different certifications that we have with the dates that those certifications expire or the date that you achieve that certification. So you could have a certification section along with your skills section with that. And I would say you could probably put your certifications section underneath your education section. Hope that helps. So let's talk more about the work experience and what makes a good bullet point, because this is where a lot of companies are going to be able to kind of see how your experience is related to what they want to do. So things to remember is we want a good, strong action verb, and it talks about the resume guide, and I'm going to drop that link here in the chat here momentarily. But the link, we always want to lead in with the strong action verb. And if you're having a hard time thinking action verbs, it's kind of redundant, but if we are having a hard time trying to find a good, strong lead-in verb, we can use the resume guide. We don't want to say I, me, we. We want to avoid the personal pronouns in these bullet points. We just want to list what we did and maybe the tools that we utilized with it. We want to quantify. Anytime you can use numbers, whether it was being able to work with a team of 4 or weighted tables of up to 15 guests, or, answered phone calls of utilizing Microsoft Word, or creating invoices using Microsoft Word. Quantify the data. So really we want a verb, a task, and a result. And I have a couple of examples of what that is looking like. So here's an example of a bullet point. For this position, I worked with other students in feeding, treating, and vaccinating calves and mature cattle. K-State is a land-grant institution, and we are heavy in the ag industry. So we do have cattle examples here. That being said, how we can make that better is we could say we teamed with 5 other student workers to feed, treat, and vaccinate over 300 calves and mature cattle. So we quantified that data. We went into more detail about what we did. We talked about our team, and we took out the use of the pronouns, the personal pronouns, and that goes a long way. That bullet point has a little bit more teeth to its bite. Another example is I volunteered at the Boys and Girls Club in Manhattan. So we want to go ahead and try to use better verbs, better actions. So we can say assisted with the delivery of after-school programs for up to 30 children ranging in ages from 5 to 12 years old. Now, this is important because what we're doing is we're talking about working with a large number of students and working with students from 5 to 12 years old. And that's important because the way we communicate with a 5-year-old is not the same way we communicate with a 12-year-old. So it's going to show our range of being able to handle conversations with different groups. So kind of keep that in mind as you put in these bullet points. There's nothing too minimal that you've done that cannot be included as a bullet point. So I was a dishwasher in college. I worked at the Derb as a dishwasher, and I got, lots of great experience. Worked in a team of 10, scheduled, maintained working relationships, communicated with food directors and managers. Those kinds of things will add up. So there's nothing too minimal that we can't include on this. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the link into here for the resume guide. That's going to be in the chat right now because we're getting pretty close to the end. So the next thing we want to talk about is other information that we have where we can list our honors and awards, our activities, and really we just want to list those out. If you are getting a 4-year renewable scholarship, you would put that scholarship underneath honors and awards and put, fall 2021 to present, right? Because that's a renewable scholarship. Honor roll. Your honors and awards do not have to be, the Nobel Prize. If you got a company award or anything like that, absolutely include those as well. High five of the year, you got it. I did not. I sent it to one person, not everyone. All right, let's try this again. All right, that resume guide should have gone out to everyone at that point in time. All right, activities, we just want to list them. For now, what we want to do is just kind of list those activities out. Eventually, we can make our activities as a part of bullet points where we talk about leading meetings, where we talk about organizing calendars and all that fun stuff. So here is that. And so let's go ahead and talk about a lot of these things here real quick. These are things that you should not include on your resume. You don't need a picture. You don't need to put your date of birth, nationality or ethnic background, your sex, your disability, marital status, number of kids, sexual orientation. None of those should be on your resume. So if you have something like that, let's go ahead and try to reformat your resume. Lastly, religious affiliation. If you are wanting to work at a summer camp for a particular religious organization and you are that religious affiliation, feel free to include that. But if you're looking at maybe working at a Koch or a Cargill, know that that religious affiliation may not be as appropriate for that company. So kind of keep that in mind as you're putting things together. Other things that we need to consider, if you have military service, that's something that we can list. Volunteer experience are things that we can list. Language proficiencies, you see certifications is on there. All these things, anything that you have that adds to your professional development can actually be a category where you are highlighting your skill set. We're almost done here. Things that considerations, your length should be 1 page. The type of paper, most everything is digital right now, so just send everything digital, but there is resume paper. Go in with a buddy or two and split a $8 pack of resume paper, and maybe everyone gets like 5 sheets, because really when we go to the career fairs and whatnot, you're going to hand some out, but a lot of companies are going to ask you to upload those separately. Lastly, references. References, I normally tell students to not include those on your resume. I have it on a separate sheet. We don't need to list references available upon request on a resume. Take that off. Your references can be on a separate sheet of paper, and then you can upload them or attach them if the company asks for it. So here's an example of an early student resume. These are real resumes that we have in the resume guide. And again, that link is in the chat. These resumes are from real students that have worked in our office at one time or another. We changed their name to protect their identity, but they did give us permission to share them. So again, here's the objective statement: obtain a summer internship in landscape design. They have their education right here, Bachelor of Science in Agriculture, May 2019. They have their majors right there, and they have an option right next to that. They have a community college experience right there. Here's where they list some of the relevant coursework. And then you go into related or work experience or related experience to what they're applying for. So if they're looking for landscape design, then they're putting in garden designs, what they did with how many students they worked with. Again, they're quantifying their data. They have a good, strong task to help lead in. Then you have some other events that happened with them. And then they have additional work experience down here. If you don't want to list your job at Sonic or Dillon's or Kroger or anything like that, you can just go ahead and put it down here. Here's a job at Dillon's, what they did there. And then they have their honors and activities down here. So this example is a very good example for an early student. Maybe you don't have a whole lot of stuff. Definitely feel free to use this format or any of the formats that we have listed in that resume guide. Last thing, 2 things is, your resume, have it critiqued. Have your resume critiqued. That's the big thing. I didn't talk about interview skills, but really for now, I would say the best thing with interviewing is just to practice. And I probably should have edited this out and maybe included a couple of other C's. There are 3 C's of resume: being consistent in your resume, be consistent with your information. Number 2 is have your resume critiqued. You can look over your resume 10 times and still not catch everything wrong. It's always good to get feedback on your resume. So always have another set of eyes or another couple pairs of eyes. Look at your resume to see if your grammar and your spelling is up to date. And 3 is be confident. Be confident in your resume. Be confident that your story is your story. And so the 3 C's of a resume are to be consistent, make sure it's critiqued, and make sure you're confident in it.